So it's lesson 2, part 2, and I want to do a few things, important things. One is I want to show you FreeCamp. So one of the things your team needs is you need a project management, you need a central place to manage your projects. Okay? There's a number of different online project management software solutions out there. The original one is called Basecamp. Basecamp used to have a free version available, but they don't anymore. There's a number of other tools. I've listed some of them here, but rather than me having to go to different sites to look at different teams' projects, I'm just going to ask that you all use FreeCamp. I already have an account here. So I'll show you what a FreeCamp project looks like. So this is a project, a research project that I've been involved with where we've had a number of students working, current and graduate students working on the project. So what's in here? So in FreeCamp, it has task tracking, there's a discussion board, there's time tracking, and event calendar, and document library. So I'll quickly go through these so you can see what this looks like. So for example, we've got a task list here set up with basically to do, being done, and finished. And your team is going to break up the project this way. This will be part of assignment 2. For assignment 1, you really just need to set it up, but I'll just show you quickly what's here. So we can create tasks. We can give them priorities. We can assign them due dates. Yes, my task is overdue here. And we can have discussion around it. So for example, here's what a task in here looks like. So I've assigned this task to Anthony, who's our server administrator. It's medium priority. He's got a couple weeks and he is working on it. And when he had questions, he could post it here. We could have discussion around this item. And when it's done, we'll mark it as complete. So you guys are going to use this site to manage, divide up the tasks in your project. The other thing that you're going to use in here, 2 other things you can use. One is there is a document library. So if you want to share documents like specifications, or you're working on design documents, etc., you can store them all here as part of FreeCamp. So the idea of having this centralized site is, for example, let's say somebody new joins the team. Well, all the project documents, they're already here. And then the other thing you're going to use in this class is time tracking. And we're going to talk about why time tracking is so important. So I track all of my time that I spend on the research project. Anytime I work on a project, I log the hours. Okay, and we'll talk about why time tracking is so important. So make sure your team sets up a project on FreeCamp. Include your team name in the project name. Add the members of your team and make sure you add me. Just use my college email, please. Okay, we don't have tons of time here, so I'm going to go through a few of these things fairly quickly and we'll wrap up by 11 o'clock. So I had a few questions about the process. So this is kind of the process of how we start from the client until the time we get to launch. So we're going to kind of go through this whole cycle over the semester. So we started the project definition phase. So we have our client document, our brief. We've met with our client. You're now going to outline in the proposal. The next thing you're going to do is work on the site structure. Then we're going to work on the design. We're going to build the site, and then we're going to hopefully launch a prototype by the end of the semester. Okay. So here's some of the things we might do. We're not doing all of these, but we've hit a lot of these. We've met with our client. They've provided us with some of their material, including their social media. They've described our audience to us. And we've talked a bit about the back-end programming requirements in this case, right? So we've gotten a chance to ask questions, refine the overall goals. These slides are on Blackboard for you to reference. So these are the things that kind of are going to go in a lot of what's in our proposal, right? Budget, time tracking, schedules, roles, and our overall project plan, our kickoff meeting. Well, we've already done that. So one of the most important takeaways from this whole class really revolves around the budget. Okay, this is a question I get from students all the time, particularly students as they're close to graduating or who have recently graduated, and they send me an email or they contact me on LinkedIn and they say, somebody wants me to do a project, but I have no idea how much to charge or how to figure out what a reasonable cost for this project is. So one of the big takeaways in this class and over the next couple classes is we're going to figure this out and create a process you can go through to start to cost out a budget. Okay. So there's a quick link here on Blackboard for you. It says, what factors affect a web project budget? If you can click that link, should allow you to sign in with your school account, your Microsoft account, into this little whiteboard. So I want you to use a sticky note when you sign in and create a sticky note and put your name on it and just tell me very briefly, what do you think? What things affect how much a web project should cost? So just open this up in your browser if you can. Haven't used Microsoft Whiteboard before. It's pretty primitive, but we'll see if it works. Okay, Camilo, I'll add that. So okay, and okay, if you can, add the note here yourself, if you're able to. Okay, you can't. All right, then just use the chat. Okay, that's fine. So Emily says, just add them in the chat. I'll add them here. We've got competition and demand. Okay, yep, so okay. So don't worry about it. I'll add them to the whiteboard. Whoops. So that's okay, so Maria says time. Yep. Okay, Rebecca says, yeah, required capabilities is going to affect it. Yeah, more complex site is going to cost more. So Maggie's complexity. Aha, that's a yeah. Okay, so scope changes. Rachel, that is a big one. So this happens all the time. We should always expect. Right, okay, good point, Justin. So third party, what other kinds of charges are there besides third party costs? So hosting, what else? What are some other charges that maybe we have to pay and then pass on to our customers? Yeah, domain, SSL, external like paid services. Yeah, so right, Rudia, we're using some kind of API or something. Yeah, paid packages for coding, libraries, absolutely. Okay, so that was Justin B, who had that idea initially. All right, good suggestion. Absolutely, there's going to be often there's going to be third-party costs. Okay, yeah, deadline requests. That's a good one. Are we going to charge more if they suddenly need a bunch of things at the last minute and we're working all weekend? Right, that's a really good one, Rebecca. Right? Are we doing content and branding work, or is the client, or is it a combination? You know, so sometimes they may have some material, but we're still doing some work. Anything else you can think of that would, anything else we would need to think about if we're trying to come up with a budget? Aha, right. So training and support, right? We have to take time to show them how to use our system and do updates, or are we doing updates? Right? Those things are going to get factored in. It's a great list. I'll take a screenshot of this and post this to Blackboard. Right, maintenance. Right, just because we build it today doesn't mean it's never going to need maintenance. Great suggestions. Anything else you can think of? Yep. So yeah, that would come in with the updates. Yeah, but same idea. You're right. Maintenance and updates. Aha. That one is very highly overlooked. So testing, reviews, overall, this process is known as quality assurance. Right? And this is something that many developers don't think about when they're costing out a project. They think about how long it's going to take to plan, design, and build, but they don't think about the work that's involved in checking and testing and debugging before a site goes live. SEO, absolutely. Yeah, performance, that would probably come in here as well. Doing performance testing. Right, are we doing ads? It's a good one, Nick. All right, this is a great list. So what we want to do, for your assignment, you guys have to come up with a budget for the project. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a few samples together. We're going to do one together today. Hung, what do you mean by visitor interaction? How would that affect the cost? I'm not disagreeing, I'm just not entirely clear.
I mean, maybe they have some kind of, I'm not really sure about this, so that's why I put a question mark.
Okay, all right, well, we'll add it. So interactive tools. Yep, if we have interactive tools, yeah, they're probably going to affect the cost. That's fair. So what we want to do is I'm actually going to describe a few real projects that I've built over the years, and we're going to do some practice budgeting. So this example today we're going to do together, and then maybe next week in class I'm going to give you a description of another web project, and in your teams I'm going to have each team create a budget for the project, and then we can compare the budgets together. We can see if the teams agree, and then I'll show you the actual budgets. So budgeting, and these slides are on Blackboard, basically come down to a few things. This is not a long slide deck, and then we'll get into our project budget in a minute. So we should charge fairly. We should be paid fairly. You guys have spent thousands of dollars and, almost 2 years of your lives becoming professional web developers. You deserve to get paid fairly to do it. Okay? Ultimately, cost is really about hours. So in terms of figuring out that question, how much do I charge this person for the project? It really comes down to how many hours is this going to take me? And yes, there are some of these other costs in addition, like third-party costs, but most of the work, most of the things you've mentioned here are really about time spent. So how much is your time worth? And how many hours do you need to spend on the project? Right. Well, you know what, Justin, it almost doesn't matter, right? Because if it's you working for yourself, like we should figure out the number of hours it will take, regardless of how many people there are. The budget would be the same, I think, if it's one person or two people, for example. And this kind of speaks to what Rachel mentioned, scope creep. I've virtually never done a project that doesn't grow in size. Projects don't get smaller as we work on them because either we realize there's things we didn't think about, or our client suddenly comes up with different ideas about what they want and need. So we're always trying to manage this. And this can often determine whether our project's successful or not. If we let scope creep get too big, yeah, it does. Rudia, do you have an experience with it? Maybe you want to turn on your mic. Can you share dealing with it, what that was like? If you have a working microphone.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, thanks. Because I know that the scope creep, every time we work with a project, we'll start with a basic functionalities. But as the development goes on, every time they need additional features, they're asking for, can we do this? Can we do that? It happens all the time. We need to expect that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why your proposal, what I'm having you do for assignment 1, it has to be really clear about what work you're agreeing to do. Because if it's very vague, your customer is going to say, oh, well, I asked for this, but it now needs all these other things, and I don't want to pay extra. So your proposal has to be really clear. We're doing these things. And if you want something else, we'll do it, but we need more time and we need more money.
Yeah, when we are working freelancing, we'll get the works from our connections. But even we have a proposal, we cannot say no every time.
Well, my suggestion is I always say yes. You want this? Sure, I'll do it. This is how much more it's going to cost. This is how much extra time it's going to take. Do you want me to do you want to do this, yes or no? So rarely do I say no. I say yes, but no in the context of the original timelines and original budget. I think of it this way. If you had a builder building a house for you, and you had an architect who drew out every room of the house and every window and every door, and they built a room, I'm in my home office, they built an office, and once the walls were all covered and bricked and drywalled, I said to the builder, I think I'd like a window in this wall. You built the brick wall, that's what we designed, that's what we agreed to, but now I want you to put a window here. They're going to put a window here, but they're going to say, well, this isn't what we agreed to. and we didn't budget for this window, so we'll
Yes.
do it, but now we need more time and more money to cut away the brick and buy the glass and put it in. So I think that's the approach to take with scope.
Yeah, I think it is always good to make the budget based on the hours. If we are finalizing the budget in the initial phase, suppose we have finalized the total budget of the project at the initial phase, that is where the problem lies. If we are doing the budgeting based on the hours, then that is fine, I think. We can say that it'll take more hours and it'll take more cost than that we decided first.
Agreed. I'll actually show you. Here's one thing. Let me just see, where do I? So in proposals, I actually typically put in to a proposal, if I find it. So I put in a sentence like this. The tasks here are the entire scope of my company's obligation, and any task not listed here is beyond the scope and may require additional charges. So this way, if a client asks me for something outside of the proposal, I just refer them back here. And I say very clearly, I'll do it, but it's not covered by this budget. It's extra. So typically, we're usually billing on a fixed basis. We have to give a client a price up front. Most clients in this business are not going to agree to let you just charge them by the hour. Only someone you already have a long relationship with is going to agree to this. Eventually, if you can get clients to pay you by the hour, that's good, but it's pretty tough with a new client. They want cost certainty. So we have to guard again, we have to try to estimate accurately, and we really have to watch for scope creep. Because if we quote $5,000 and our customer adds $3,000 of changes to it, now they're paying us $5,000 and we're doing $8,000 worth of work. And typically it's normal that we bill in installments. We typically, in web projects, get somewhere in the neighborhood of 30%. When our client signs the contract, we invoice them and we don't start working until they pay that advance. That's typical. You should not bill the full project and expect to get paid not until the very end. Because if your client chooses not to pay you, you've now done all that work for nothing. So typically 30% upfront, 30% somewhere in the middle, and 40% at the end is pretty typical. Okay. So it's critical that you track your time when you're budgeting. Why is it important to log all the time you spend on a project? And how's that related to figuring out how much a project should cost? Right, yep, absolutely, Maggie, to have a time record spent in each phase. And how is that related to the budgeting? Right, because the budget is ultimately based on the time. So if we imagine a project is going to take us 300 hours, we charge the client based on that. If we don't track our time through the project, how do we know if we're on budget? And at the end of the project, how do we know if we've made money or lost money? We need to compare how are our time estimates with the actual time we spent. Okay, so in this class, you are going to be tracking your time individually in FreeCamp, like I have done here. And if you don't, this will affect your individual grade. I should see all the time you spend on the project, and that includes your team meetings. Okay. And if one student in your team has spent far more time than everyone else, the team grades are going to reflect that. Okay, so you do need to track your time in this class. Okay, so let's get to a budget. I'm going to give you a simple example. Shouldn't take us that long. So I had a client kickoff meeting with a community not-for-profit organization. This was several years ago. I don't think they're using the site anymore. They decided they wanted to redo it. But from the kickoff meeting, this is what they said they wanted. Okay. I determined they needed a content managed site, didn't have to be anything custom, so an existing CMS would work. They wanted a site design. They wanted image galleries, an event calendar, a private area for documents, and the ability to send and display newsletters, and then some training. I had to show them how to use the whole system. So we've got 15 minutes. Let's figure this out. We can use the chat. Let's take these items one at a time. Let's start with the site design. How many hours on kind of your low and high end would you put these at? To do a site design for a not-for-profit small community organization. You're gonna come up with a design kind of mock-up. How many hours would you need? Okay? So use the chat, give me an estimate. Justin says 2 to 5, 15. Yeah, well, first let's just deal with the design. We're just dealing with the design first. 20 hours, Rachel, you think, and is that on the low end or the high end? Okay. Okay, so any other thoughts? How many hours roughly would it take you? So 15, 20 on the high end. Okay, so let's put our high at 20. What about on our low end? If you were going to do a mock-up and it went really well, you had a clear vision and you were happy with your work, what would be a low end of hours? Justin, a wireframe may be a little light because they'd still need a design. You say 12 on the low. Any other opinions? 8, 5, 6, an 8-hour work day. 8. Okay, let's go with that, right? So this is the kind of negotiation you're going to do in your team. Each of you is going to do this exercise on your own. So I find using this kind of Excel template, which I'll put on Blackboard and you can use, this is what I want each of you to do for the project budget. So go through Quinton's requirements, itemize it, what are all the components, and then do a low and a high for each, right? So then I'll just, okay. So then once you have your layout and design, once you have your site design that the client likes, what about doing the layout, actually, implementing the CSS and making that design kind of a reality? What's a low, so a best case scenario, and what's a high? How long would it take you to convert your mock-up into kind of a functional HTML CSS layout? Okay, Hung says 8 for low. You can also use your mics. It's easier, faster. Tell me what you think. What's low and high? You to do site CSS.
I would say 24 high because sometimes in CSS you have transition and animation and
Okay.
it can be pretty tricky.
Okay, so far we've got the same kind of 8 low, 20 high. So, okay, Nick, would that be low or high? Couple work days. 24. Okay, so Nick, you're saying low is 16. Rachel, 24. So is that high? Okay. So 24, 15. Okay, so day or two. All right, so let's say maybe 24 here. Just looking at some of the thoughts for low. So I see 8, I see 15, 12. Yeah, okay. I mean, maybe we'll go with around 12, like a day and a half of work. In the best case scenario, you have it done in a day and a half. Worst case scenario, we're saying 8-hour days, sort of 3 full days. So a day and a half to 3 days. Okay. What about choosing and setting up a content management system? So Emily, coming back to your question, we're not building it from scratch. We're going to use an existing content management system. So, you know, you have to pick which one you want to use and set up an instance of it. What's the low and high for that to get a working site with a content manager up and running? What would your low and high ranges be here? Okay, so like half a day to a day, Emily says, you know, to get like a WordPress install configured. Any other thoughts? Okay, so Nick, you're saying half a day, you know, within a day. Okay. Like to get a couple other opinions. Anybody else? How long would it take you to take something like WordPress or Joomla? Okay, 10 hours. Okay, sort of similar ranges. Any other thoughts? How long would you need to set up a WordPress Joomla site, something like that? So somewhere in the range of like half a day to a day. Okay, and then within your content manager, the client needs the ability to create image galleries and upload photos, have different galleries. So you're going to find or use some sort of module or plugin probably for this. How much time would you need to implement that feature? Okay, 5 high. Okay, so Maggie says 2 to 5. Anybody else? What do you think? How much time, if this task was given to you, how much time would you need to create image galleries within a CMS? Okay, 3 to 7. So we'll maybe say 2 to 7. Thanks, Janelle. Okay, what about an event calendar? So again, we're going to have to find a module, install it. Well, Justin, when you're working within a content management system, the credits are already there. That's already kind of built into the plugin system. So yes, it's true. We do need to give them credit, but that's kind of already built in. So how long to do an event calendar? We've got to find a module or a plugin for this and configure it. So Mag, you're saying about the same. Any other opinions to do events? How long do we need? 4 to 8, half a day to a day. Okay, we'll maybe put it in as, okay. What about event registration? So this is a separate thing. Not every, an event calendar and the ability to sign up for them, those are actually separate things. So within here, we now need this feature. 4 to 8, okay. They want a private document library. So members of the organization can log in and they can see like the meeting minutes and things like that, other documents. So there has to be a private area of the site. So how long do we need to set that up? So administrators can upload documents. Okay, so Mag, you're saying 8 to 10. Anybody else? Agree with Maggie? Do you have a different estimate in mind? What do you think? Okay, so roughly a day. All right, so let's go to...
What's a private document library?
Well, the organization will have PDFs and things like information about the organization that they want to be able to post on the website, but it's only for the members. So the area has to be password protected. So the, an average, just any anonymous visitor can't view those documents.
Okay,
There
gotcha.
needs to be registration and login. So they want newsletters. So they want to be able to create and email out a newsletter through the website. How long, how much time would we need for that? Okay, Hong says 3 to 6. We get a few other opinions. Yeah, it could include, so integrating with something like MailChimp, possibly. Depends, that's an option. So we'll say maybe 3 on the low end, 10 on the high end. They also want an archive. So not only can they create, okay, might be 16, sure, we'll raise it. And they want an archive. So not only can they send a newsletter, but it saves, and all of the old newsletters are visible on the website. So they can see a list, they can click on one and read an old one. Okay. And then we need some training, right? So we need to sit down with the group and show them how to use all these features within the content management system. How to add new images or events or create a newsletter, how to update the content. So how much time? Maggie says 10 to 15. Any other thoughts? How long will we spend with them? Okay, all right. So this is roughly, so let's total it up, right? So 55 hours on the low end, 122 on the high end. For 16, got it, okay. So I think we were down to 12. Don't think it changes. That's okay, Nick. Okay, so there's our hours estimates. What would be a reasonable hourly rate? Yeah, could be, Nick, good point. So let's say if somebody, somebody came to you tomorrow and said, I want to pay you to build a web project. What do you think, as semester 4 students close to graduating, what's a fair hourly rate for you to charge, do you think? And your teams, you can use this rate in your assignment 1. How much are you guys worth? 17 and a half, 25, 20, 25, beginner. Yeah, I'd say you're in the ballpark. I'd say if you're working for somebody else, your wage is lower because they're the ones that have to do the work to find the clients and manage them. And they're typically taking the risk and they're just paying you to do the work. But if the client is your own, I think 25 bucks an hour is a pretty reasonable wage. Okay, so let's put that in at 25. And now, so what do we do? B13 times B14. So there's our low end, right? There's our high end. Yeah, I hope so. Okay, so you're saying something like this, somewhere between 1,300 and 3,000 bucks for this. So this is the rough work, right? Roughly, if the perfect scenario that we have no problems, everything, all our design and development goes super smoothly, we're looking at about 55 hours, so we're making this. Okay? If things take longer, we have problems like the kind of worst case scenario, we're around here. Now, this is really important. This is for you only. You don't show this to the client, right? We only are going to show the client this. So how do we figure out if we've got a low and a high? How do we figure out what it's going to be and what the item should cost? So one way is you could take an average. So we could say if best case is 8 hours and worst case is 20, what I typically do is put the cost a little above the average. So about 60% of the way to the high, right? So our average here is going to be 14 hours. So here's how I would calculate it. I'd do B3 plus C3 and then I'm going to times 60%. So 60% of that total. Whoops, and then times 25. Yeah, not quite right. So 28 I guess I'd divide it in half. It's 25. And I want to add another third times 1.2. Thanks, Hung. My math is bad.
When you create a budget and a proposal, do you aim a bit higher so in negotiations you can lower your price, but therefore not losing actual money in the terms?
That's a great question. Sorry, so there's my formula. So it's about, I take the average. Sorry, this should be cost. Great. Maggie, I'll answer that question. So we're doing $25 an hour. So there would be, okay, I've done something wrong with my math. Maybe for now, I'll just do the average. We'll put it in the middle. Sorry. We'll do this. So let's see if we average it out. So here's our average. So Maggie, what do we do about negotiation and cost?
So essentially you want to aim higher than where you're able to settle because you can always negotiate down, but you can never negotiate back up.
Here's my policy on pricing. I never negotiate price, ever. I figure out what my time is worth. So if my time is worth $25 an hour, I say to customers, if you won't pay me $25 an hour, I think this is a fair rate for what I'm capable of. I'll find another project who will pay me this. So here's what I do on price. Let's say I give them a budget like this one, okay? And they look at the total and they say, $6,300, that's too much. Can you cut the price? If you start negotiating down and saying, I will do all of this work for less money, there's really no limit to where that stops.
You kind of open a can of worms if you do that.
So my experience is, rather than saying, I'm going to do all this work, but I'm going to charge you less, what I do is say, okay, let's look at what's essential here and what features are nice to have, like a chat bot, that maybe you don't have the budget for right now. Right. So rather than me taking less money to do the same amount of work, I try to negotiate about scaling back the size of the project to fit their budget. And I say, okay, what are the essentials and what are the nice to haves that we could add on later if the project is successful and you have more budget down the road? So I find that's a more successful negotiating strategy for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're not taking less money. And number two, you're also signaling that you're looking to build a longer term relationship. And you're saying, hey, I'm not greedy. I'll take less money now, but I'm going to do less work for it. And I hope the project is successful. And if I do a good job and your project succeeds, I know I'm going to get more work later. So if you want to do $4,000 of this today and the other $2,300 later, we can do that. Yes, you would be charging HST, it's a service. So I don't think negotiating on your rate is a good idea, because the other thing is, I had a customer who used to try to always grind me down to get me to lower my rate. And I said to him, I charge everybody the same. You want to pay less than everybody else. I said, if 5 clients call me or send me emails and you're paying me less, which client do you think I'm going to respond to last? And he said, well, I guess it's going to be me if I'm paying you less. And I said, of course it's going to be you if you're paying me less. I said, where do you want to be in the priority list? He said, I want to be first. I said, fine, I'm going to charge you 20% more than everybody else. If you pay me 20% extra, I will always respond to your calls and your emails first. And he said, okay, and he paid me. Okay. But my time is my time. So the easiest thing is figure out a fair rate and charge it, and don't negotiate that rate down. Okay, because like Maggie said, it's a slippery slope. Once you open that door, there's really no limit to how far down someone will grind you on price. So don't lower your rate, shrink the scope, I think is the more effective way to lower someone's cost. And if they say, your client says, look, someone's going to do all of this for less than that, I say, that's great. I can't beat that price. This is how long it's going to cost me to do this work. If you can get the same quality of work and get all this stuff done and you're happy with the quality and someone can do it for less, you know, I totally understand. You do what's best for your organization. If you ever need me, you know where to find me. But this is what it will take me to do. And sometimes you just have to be prepared to walk away from a project. That's right. Now I realize we're just past 11. There's 2 things missing here. There are 2 other things we should add. So what I would do for the budget is I would take these numbers, and Maggie, you asked about a buffer. I'd bump them up each a little bit. So if here my average is 14, I'd maybe charge 16 hours to give myself a bit of a buffer in each of these. So here are all the components, but there are 2 extra items we should add here. I'm going to show you these. I'll upload this to Blackboard and I will set you free for the day. There's 2 other things we should add that are part of our time, even if they're not features of the site. One of them is actually listed in the whiteboard. Over on the right. It's something we need to do as part of the process, right? Quality assurance. So having the client review it, doing testing. Or you could call it testing. So how many hours, if our project, let's say again, low and high, if it's 55 hours of design and development, how much quality assurance time should we add? Yeah, often I take a percentage. Often it's 15 to 20% of the overall design and development time. So Maria's going to say, let's put that in as like maybe on the low end 12. You said on the high end, right? So let's add that to the budget, right? Once we have the site run, we need to go through it. We need to make sure everything's working. We need to try to break it. We need our client to look at it and give us feedback if things aren't working the way they want. So that gets added. We also should be charging for this. What kinds of things go into project management? What things, activities would be included in that project management time, where we're working on the project, but we're not necessarily designing, developing? Could be maintenance. Yeah, all the planning. So this conversation, the costing, the specifications, managing the progress. Yeah. What else goes into project management? All of those things are true. Yep, the risk assessment. What did we do with Quentin this morning? That was PM time. Yeah, meeting with the clients, emails, phone calls, in-person meetings, the documentation, the task management, all of those other things we're doing, that's all billable time. It's all time we're working in order to get this project done. So it should probably be similar to the tracking issues, for sure. Sending email, all of that stuff. So I'm going to put in the same. Right? So probably a good 20% of our time is going to be spent on not designing and developing. It's actually going to be spent on QA and project management. So these should be part of our quote, right? We don't only charge for the time we're doing design work or programming. We charge for all the time. And this is why our time tracker is important. So this is probably a pretty reasonable budget. Right? So I wouldn't show these columns to the client in the proposal. I'd simply show, so everything in gray would be hidden. It should simply be the item and the cost. I don't even show the hourly rate. I just show a cost and the total. Okay, so I'll just kind of, so I've grayed those out. So don't show these columns to client. Okay, so for your assignment, each of you is going to do your own spreadsheet like this and submit it. Itemize the items, figure out low and high in hours, and then use these together. So you're each going to do your own, and then you put them together and have a conversation and you figure out an approximate cost. You guys did really well in terms of the hours. The actual hours, yes, because you should show this to the client, right? Just like in a restaurant bill or your grocery bill, you don't just want a total. You want to see, like your client, if you just show them a subtotal, the client's going to go, well, how'd you come up with that? Well, you show them the breakdown. And then if they say, well, this is too expensive, then you can have the conversation about what's in and what's going to be left until later. So the overall budget in your proposal should look like this. Okay, so this is like your rough work that you use to come up with this. So I can show you the actual project budget, I think. Now I charged a little more than $25 an hour. I charged $65 an hour. So this was the class's estimate from last year, right? So fairly similar, 74 to 276 is what they put it at. And here was ours, and we included quality assurance and project management. I think I charged the client somewhere in the neighborhood of $4,000 or $5,000 for this project at $65 an hour. So I'm going to upload this file to Blackboard, and you're going to use it. So you're going to replace the items with the components in Quentin's document. What are the components of the Man Up project? And how many hours will each one take? And you can charge it at $25 an hour. So your final budget is going to look like this. So I'll upload this to Blackboard for you now, so you can use it as a reference and use it in your assignment. Next week, we're going to do another example, but I'll have you do it in your teams this time. So I'll describe a separate project entirely, and I'll give you some time in class to come up with a team budget. Okay. So please set up your team project on FreeCamp and invite me. And you can start working on your proposal, but you do have 2 weeks to do it. Are there any questions before we end for today? I know a few people wanted help and asked me to stick around, which I'm happy to do. Okay, okay, yep. Okay, thanks, Nick. You too. Have a good day. We'll see most of you on Thursday. If you have no questions, you're free to go. If you do, I will stick around. Thanks. You can use my template, Ivan. I kind of made a mess of it, but I think I've simplified it for you. Thanks, everybody. See most of you on Thursday.